I never thought a piece of dirt could mean so much, until the day I saw bulldozers tearing through what used to be my grandfather's fields. From a ridge above the valley, I watched the machines crawl like metal ants, carving foundations where wildflowers used to bloom. I could taste dust in the air, feel it sting my eyes, and for a few long moments I couldn't breathe. 96 new homes were being built, and they were being built on my land. I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped. I was driving home from town, passing by the old road that cut through property, when I saw a construction crane stabbing the sky. The sound of engines echoed across the hills, sharp and unrelenting. At first, I thought maybe the county had finally decided to improve the drainage ditch. But as I got closer, I saw rows upon rows of framed houses rising out of the earth. It wasn't just one or two homes. It was an entire development. My name's Jack Reynolds, and I'm not a man who likes to pick fights. I inherited the land from my grandfather, 200 acres of rolling fields just outside the city limits. For years, developers had offered to buy it. I turned down every offer. The land had been in my family for generations, and it was the last piece of what my grandfather built with his own hands. He used to say, "Jack, land's the only thing they can't make more of." Turns out, he was only half right. They can't make more, but they sure can take it. I parked my truck by the edge of the site and climbed the hill to get a better view. Excavators churned through the soil, cutting into the hillside, laying pipes, setting up scaffolding. The smell of diesel hung heavy in the breeze. A few workers looked up when they saw me, but no one stopped. They thought I was just another curious bystander. Then I saw her, the woman in the bright pink suit, standing near a yellow-capped bulldozer, clipboard in hand, barking orders. Even from a distance, she radiated authority. Later, I learned her name was Karen Whitfield, head of the newly formed Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. But right then, she was just a person standing on my land, pretending it was hers. I approached one of the workers, a man wearing a neon vest and hard hat. "Hey," I said, "who's in charge here?" He looked at me over his sunglasses, half annoyed, half confused. "That'd be Karen," he said, nodding toward the woman in pink. "She's a project manager." I walked down the dirt path, heart pounding. "Ma'am," I called out. She turned sharply, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. "Yes?" she said impatiently. "I'm Jack Reynolds," I said. "This property, you're standing on my land." She blinked, like I'd told her the sky was green. Then she smiled, the kind of smile people use when they think they're smarter than you. "Oh, no, sir," she said sweetly. "This is Maple Ridge Phase 2, owned by the HOA Development Group. We've got full county approval." "Funny," I said, "because I got the deed sitting in my safe at home." Her smile faltered for half a second, then returned even sharper. "You're mistaken," she said. "Everything's been verified through the county records. If you have an issue, take it up with them." And just like that, she turned away and started shouting at a crane operator. I stood there dumbfounded. I'd seen arrogance before, but this was something new. She didn't care whether I owned it. She didn't care about the truth. She had power, permits, backing, and the kind of confidence only people with money and lawyers seem to have. But she had one thing wrong. I wasn't about to walk away. That night, I pulled out my grandfather's old lockbox. Inside were deeds, tax receipts, and survey maps going back almost a century. The original deed was there, clear as day, with my name listed as the current owner. I double-checked the county records online, and that's when I realized what they'd done. Somewhere in the bureaucratic shuffle, someone had updated the zoning maps. My land parcel had been listed under a development grant. It wasn't sold, it was reassigned. I called the county office the next morning. After being transferred 3 times, I finally got through to someone in land management. Her voice was polite but tired, like she'd had this conversation before. "Sir," she said, "according to our database, that land belongs to Maple Ridge HOA. The sale went through 18 months ago." "Sale?" I asked. "I never sold it." "Well, there's a record of transfer. Looks like it was approved by your signature." I laughed bitterly. "Lady, I never signed a damn thing." There was silence on the line. Then she sighed. I'd suggest contacting your attorney. Weeks passed. Every morning I drove by the site. Every morning, more houses went up. The framework turned into walls. Roofs were laid. Driveways paved. The HOA signs went up next, clean and smug. Maple Ridge Community. Luxury living starts here. It felt like watching a thief move into your home and redecorate it. I hired a lawyer, a quiet, sharp guy named Eli Sanders, who specialized in land disputes. He flipped through my paperwork like a surgeon studying x-rays. After an hour, he looked up and said, "Jack, this is going to be messy." "How messy?" I asked. "They use a forged signature to push the sale through a shell company," he said. That company was later absorbed by the HOA. The county rubber-stamped the transfer without checking. You've got a solid case, but they'll drag this out for years. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of it. "So what do I do? Stop construction?" He shook his head. "If you file now, they'll hit you with counterclaims, injunctions, and delays. You'll spend a fortune and get nowhere. Let them finish. The more they build, the more they owe. Once the houses are done, we'll bring out the deed." It sounded insane at first. Let them finish building an entire neighborhood on my land? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Every house, every driveway, every brick they laid would strengthen my leverage. When the time came, I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I'd make them pay for every inch of it. So I waited. By summer, the development was in full swing. I became a regular sight on the ridge, watching from my truck as they worked below. Sometimes Karen would glance up and spot me, her jaw tightening. I could see the irritation in her face, like I was some ghost haunting her construction site. She had no idea that the man she was trying to ignore was the rightful owner of every square foot she was standing on. One afternoon, I noticed a police cruiser parked near the site entrance. A few minutes later, the officer walked up the hill toward me. He was polite, firm, professional. "Sir," he said, "we've had reports of trespassing." I chuckled. "You mean on my land?" He hesitated. "Ma'am, down there says this property's private, owned by Maple Ridge HOA. I handed him a folded copy of my deed. "Then she's mistaken." He looked it over, eyebrows raised. "You planning to take this to court?" "Already in motion," I said. "But for now, I'm just watching what they owe me multiply." The officer smiled faintly, then nodded. "Just stay clear of the heavy machinery. I don't want to file paperwork, if I don't have to." As he walked back down, I saw Karen fuming below, gesturing wildly, probably demanding to know why I wasn't being dragged off in handcuffs. I couldn't help but grin. Every brick they laid was another nail in their own coffin. By fall, the houses were nearly done. 96 homes, each with fresh paint, manicured lawns, and for sale signs gleaming in the sun. Families began touring the model homes, smiling, imagining their futures there. And not one of them knew they were walking on stolen ground. I spent that evening at the ridge again, watching the sunset burn orange across the roofs. For a moment, I almost pitied them, the buyers, not the HOA. They were just people looking for a place to live. But the people who orchestrated this, the ones who thought they could steal what generations of my family built, they were about to learn what it meant to underestimate the wrong man. As the last light faded, I whispered to myself, "Finish building. Go ahead. Every brick you lay is just adding value to my victory." By the time the ribbon-cutting ceremony rolled around, Maple Ridge was sparkling. The streets gleamed with fresh asphalt, lawns were clipped into perfect green squares, and balloons floated lazily under the midday sun. Families, county officials, and real estate agents gathered with smiles, as if they were blessing a new era of suburban perfection. Cameras flashed. Laughter carried across the wind. And standing right at the heart of it all, wearing another blinding pink suit, was Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association. What she didn't know was that her kingdom stood on a throne of lies, and the man she had dismissed months ago was walking straight toward her with the proof of her undoing folded neatly in his jacket pocket. I parked my old pickup just beyond the crowd and stepped out. The ground beneath my boots still felt familiar, even after the months of construction that had buried its roots under concrete and pipework. I could still trace where the old fence line had run, where my grandfather's barn once stood before it was flattened without permission. This wasn't just a development. It was an open wound. As I moved closer, I could hear Karen addressing the crowd through a wireless microphone. Maple Ridge is a shining example of what community, vision, and progress can accomplish. 96 homes, built with integrity, built with pride, built for the future. I almost laughed. Integrity, pride, future. She spoke the words like charms meant to ward off the truth. I waited, hands in my pockets, until the applause faded. Then I took a deep breath and began to walk forward. People turned as I passed. Some recognized me. The quiet man who had stood on the ridge all those months, watching construction like a hawk. Others whispered. A few reporters even raised their cameras, sensing something in the air. Karen spotted me halfway through her thank you speech. Her confident tone cracked for a split second before she quickly recovered. "And now," she said tightly, "I'd like to welcome one of our longtime community neighbors. Mr. Reynolds, wasn't it? So good to see you here supporting progress." I climbed the steps of the temporary stage and smiled. Supporting progress? That's generous of you, considering I wasn't invited. The crowd tittered nervously. Karen's painted smile faltered. "Mr. Reynolds, this is a private event. I'm standing," I interrupted, "on my own property." You could have heard a nail drop. Even the nearby bulldozers went silent. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folded paper, creased, aged, but unmistakably official. "This," I said, unfolding it slowly for everyone to see, "is the original deed to this land, recorded under my name, Jack Reynolds, verified by the county assessor, notarized, and dated before your entire development even broke ground." Karen blinked rapidly, her microphone trembling slightly in her hand. That's impossible," she stammered. Our attorneys verified everything." I turned toward the crowd, raising my voice just enough to carry. "When I first told this woman she was building on my land," she laughed, "told me to take it up with the county. So I did, and when I found the forgery, the fake signature claiming I'd sold the land, I hired a lawyer who specializes in property fraud. And guess what we found? The sale never legally happened. This land was stolen." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Reporters started snapping photos. Someone began filming on their phone. Karen looked around desperately, seeking an ally. But the county officials who'd been grinning beside her were now backing away, faces pale. I handed the document to a reporter. "You might want to get a close-up of that," I said quietly. Karen tried to regain her composure. "This is outrageous. You can't just walk in here and—" "Oh, I can," I said, "and I did. You see, I let you finish building every single one of these homes because my lawyer told me something important. Once construction is completed on illegally obtained land, the rightful owner isn't just entitled to property. They're entitled to everything built upon it. So congratulations, Karen. You just gifted me 96 new homes." The silence that followed was electric. The next week felt like something out of a legal thriller. News stations camped outside the courthouse. Headlines screamed, "Developer faces lawsuit over illegally built community. Local landowner claims entire HOA built on his property. Forgery, fraud, and 96 homes in jeopardy." Eli, my lawyer, was calm through it all. He'd seen plenty of messes in his career, but even he admitted this one was exceptional. We filed suit not only against the HOA, but also the construction company and the county clerk's office that approved the fake sale. It was a web of corruption, negligence, and arrogance, and it was finally unraveling. In court, Karen showed up in another pastel suit, flanked by 3 attorneys who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a luxury catalog. They smirked when they saw me, an ordinary man in a simple blazer and work boots. But smirks don't hold up under evidence. Eli began the presentation methodically. "Your Honor," he said, holding up the original deed, "this document predates the alleged sale by over 30 years. Mr. Reynolds' family has paid property taxes on this land continuously, without interruption. The so-called transfer includes a forged signature and a falsified notary stamp. The supposed buyer, listed as Maple Ridge Holdings, LLC, was dissolved months before the sale even took place. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You're saying the sale was fabricated?" "Yes, Your Honor," Eli replied. "Fabricated, approved by negligence, and exploited by this HOA to construct an entire neighborhood without legal ownership." Karen's lead attorney stood up. "Your Honor, the plaintiff has no standing." The judge raised a hand. "Quiet, counsel. I've heard enough for now." Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She tried to speak up. "This man is just trying to shake us down. He could have come forward earlier. Why wait until now?" I looked straight at her. "Because patience is what separates fools from strategists. You stole my land, and I want to make sure you finished before I took it back." Even the judge cracked a faint smile at that. Weeks of hearings followed. Witnesses testified. County employees admitted to oversight. The forger who had notarized a fake signature was tracked down and confessed under oath. Bit by bit, the truth spread like wildfire. Maple Ridge had been built on stolen ground. Karen's reputation crumbled. The HOA members she'd charmed turned against her, demanding answers, refunds, and resignations. Her lawyers tried every trick in the book. Motions to dismiss, counterclaims, delays. But the evidence was unshakable. Then came the final hearing. The courtroom was packed, reporters shoulder to shoulder, cameras ready. The judge adjusted his glasses, shuffled his papers, and spoke clearly. "It is the finding of this court that the property in question rightfully belongs to Mr. Jack Reynolds. The deed is valid, and the transfer to Maple Ridge Holdings, LLC is hereby voided. Furthermore, under state law, all structures erected upon said property become the possession of the landowner." Karen's face turned the color of chalk. The gavel struck. "Just like that, I own an entire neighborhood. 96 homes. Every one of them legally mine. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just closed my eyes and let out a long breath I've been holding for over a year. Justice, when it finally comes, doesn't roar. It exhales. Outside the courthouse, microphones swarm me. 'Mr. Reynolds, what are you going to do with all the houses? Will you evict the residents? Are you planning to sell to another developer?' I paused, looking past the chaos at the skyline beyond. The same hills where my grandfather once plowed the fields by hand. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "But I'll tell you one thing. I'm not letting another HOA touch a single blade of grass on my land again." That night, I drove back to Maple Ridge. The place looked different now. Quieter. Some houses had for sale signs already being pulled out. Others were dark inside, abandoned in the panic. I parked where the old oak tree used to stand before the bulldozers erased it. The stars shimmered overhead, the same ones my grandfather had watched decades ago. I felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. The land was back in my name, but it would never look the same. Still, I smiled, because I'd kept my promise, to him, to myself, and to the truth. Victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt heavy, quiet, the kind of silence that comes after a long storm, when the air is still thick with the scent of rain and destruction. I had won, on paper, in court, in headlines, but as I stood on the ridge that evening, staring down at the glittering rows of homes I now legally owned, a thought began to claw at me. What am I supposed to do with all of this? The streets below were deserted, lights flickering through half-empty windows. The once cheerful banners that read, "Welcome to Maple Ridge," now fluttered like ghosts. Many of the families who had moved in, good people who bought those homes in good faith, had packed up and left after the court ruling. Others stayed, clinging to hope that someone would make things right. And that someone, unfortunately, was me. When you suddenly own 96 houses, the world doesn't hand you a guidebook. The county called me daily, asking what my plans were. Realtors left voicemails offering to help liquidate assets. Reporters camped outside my driveway, hoping I'd say something quotable. Even Eli, my lawyer, seemed cautious when we met to talk about the next steps. "Jack," he said, setting a folder on my table, "you can sell them off, lease them, or turn this whole place into something else entirely. You got leverage now." "Leverage," I repeated, staring at the coffee swirling in my cup. "That's what everyone keeps saying. But leverage for what? For money? For revenge. Eli shrugged. For closure, maybe. But closure isn't something you buy or build. It's something you earn, and sometimes it costs more than victory itself. A week later, I drove back through Maple Ridge, my Maple Ridge. The wind carried the faint scent of fresh lumber and asphalt. Workers had stopped coming. Construction tools lay abandoned. The HOA office trailer, once bustling, now sat locked and empty. At the corner of Birch Lane, a woman in a red coat stood outside one of the houses, holding a clipboard and looking lost. When she saw me, she waved cautiously. "Mr. Reynolds?" she called out. I nodded, stepping out of my truck. "That's me." She smiled nervously. I was the HOA's property manager. Most of the board resigned after the ruling. I've been trying to help the remaining residents figure out what happens next. Her words hung in the air like an apology that wasn't hers to make. "These people bought homes here," she continued softly. "They didn't know about the fraud. They just want a place to live. Some of them use their savings, their retirement accounts." "I know," I said quietly. "They're not the ones I'm after." She hesitated. "So what are you going to do?" That question had followed me for days, echoing in my head every time I looked at the land. And the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to sell everything, to walk away rich and righteous, proof that justice can pay. Another part of me, the part raised by my grandfather's voice, knew that money wasn't the point. He used to say, "You can't heal land by selling it. You heal it by honoring it." Maybe honoring it didn't mean fences and crops anymore. Maybe it meant people. That night, I pulled out the deed again. The paper was old, fragile, but still strong enough to bear my name. I stared at it for a long time before an idea began to take shape. The next morning, I called Eli. "I'm not selling," I said before he could speak. He sighed. "I figured you'd say that. So what's the plan?" "I'm going to rebuild," I said. "Not the HOA version. Something better." He frowned. "You want to develop it yourself?" "Not exactly," I said. "I want to give these families a chance to stay. Legally, fairly. No HOA. No middleman." Eli leaned back, studying me. "That's generous." "It's not generosity," I said. "It's justice. Real justice." A week later, I held a meeting in what used to be the HOA's community hall, a converted model home with folding chairs and a few leftover decorations. About 40 families showed up. Their faces were a mix of exhaustion and suspicion. They'd lost faith in systems, contracts, and promises. When I stood before them, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I won the lawsuit. I began. Every house, every street, legally belongs to me now. But I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to make it right. Whispers rippled through the room. "I know you all paid for these homes," I continued. "You worked hard for them, and you were lied to. That's not on you. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm creating a new agreement, one that gives each family the chance to repurchase your homes at cost, not market price. No HOA fees, no hidden clauses. You'll own your property outright." A man in the back stood up. "You'd sell them back to us? After everything?" I nodded. "You didn't steal this land, but you deserve to live on it honestly." A woman near the front began to cry quietly. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. The land didn't just need an owner. It needed a steward, someone to break the cycle of greed that had started this mess. The months that followed weren't easy. Legal paperwork, negotiations, endless meetings with the county to rewrite zoning laws. But one by one, families began signing their new deeds. They planted gardens. They fixed fences. Kids rode bikes down the same roads that had once been built on lies. Even the land seemed to breathe again. As for Karen Whitfield, she vanished from the spotlight. Rumor had it she'd fled the state after facing charges for fraud and forgery. I didn't waste another thought on her. People like that spend their lives building empires on sand, and when the tide comes in, they disappear with it. One spring morning, I stood on that same ridge again. The valley below looked different, alive, honest, and full of people who actually care about the place they call home. I could hear laughter from the park, see smoke curling from backyard grills. Eli pulled up beside me, stepping out with a grin. "You know," he said, "you could have made millions off this land, but you gave most of it away." I smiled, watching a little girl chase her dog down Birch Lane. "Money fades. Legacy doesn't." He nodded. "Your grandfather would have been proud." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think he would have." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and fresh soil. The land was mine again, but this time it didn't feel like possession. It felt like peace.